Hello everyone and welcome back to Real Disability, where we analyze representation of disability in the media by interviewing students on UW-Madison's campus. We hope you enjoy.
Hi, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, such as like age, area of study, and if you would like to self-disclose about your disability?
Yeah, of course. So hi, I'm Mia. I use she, her pronouns. I'm currently a sophomore at UW-Madison. I'm studying psychology with a certificate in disability rights and services, and then I'm going towards another certificate in education and educational services. And I have diagnosed generalized anxiety disorder and social anxiety disorder.
Great, thank you. What is your experience with disability? What do you know about disability or any personal experience you have, etc.?
Yeah, so I feel like I haven't had much experience with disability. I feel like I really started to know about it more towards like college, because I've always had anxiety, but I never really like pinpointed it until junior year of high school. But then college, I got into college and I was like, oh, mom was like, oh yeah, you can get accommodations for like testing and stuff, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can. I have a disability. Like, oh my gosh, that's like new news to me. But yeah, since then I've taken a lot of like classes in the RPSE area at UW-Madison, and I've learned a lot more about like disability culture, and that's been pretty cool to learn about.
Yeah, definitely. How has disability representation in media generally affected your lived experiences? So things like specific disability identities, or really more broadly?
Yeah, so I feel like growing up, I never really saw too many disabled characters in like TV shows or anything like that. I feel like I mainly saw like, your stereotypical like white people in TV shows. But this is like more recently, I started watching Glee a little bit, and one of the characters was in a wheelchair, but I was also talking about this with one of my supervisors too at my job. We were talking about how like there was one scene in Glee where they were like the character who uses a wheelchair, Artie, he like desperately wanted to get out of the wheelchair, and they did this whole musical number about like, all the other characters were in wheelchairs too, and it was a little bit unsettling. So I feel like most of the media that I've seen that like has representation of disability has been negative, or like not in the best light. More recently though, I have been seeing a lot of like content creators that like have been like vocal about their disability. Like there's this one content creator that I totally forget her name, but she's visually impaired, and she has a guide dog, and I've seen a little bit of her like videos on TikTok and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, those are some really great examples. Thanks for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
Have you noticed media representation of disability influence UW-Madison campus, or your experiences as a student here? And how has it impacted your daily life, if it has?
So I feel like in terms of media on our campus, honestly, I haven't really seen too many instances. I feel like I'm not exposed to enough media on campus. But I will say that because I've not been exposed to enough like media surrounding disability on campus, I feel like it shows that there's like a lack of like that exposure, which is not the best thing, because I feel like it kind of deprives like others from learning about disability culture. I mainly had to like seek out my own like, research and stuff on disability. But yeah, I feel like there's just not enough for me to like comment on in terms of that, because I haven't really seen much.
Yeah, that makes sense. To you, what is the most important aspect to be improved regarding disability representation?
Honestly, I'd really like to see more disabled actors be in more of these roles with disabled characters. There was one movie I remember, I never saw it, but Wonder, we all know the book, was made into a movie. The actor was not disabled, and it is kind of hard to like I mean, you have to find an actor that can act the part, but like if we want to have like representation that's like actually showcasing the disability, we want to have people to actually have that disability play that role. And I thought there's so many great actors that are disabled that can do as good of a job as these other actors that are like cast in these roles who aren't disabled. So this is something like we definitely have to see more of.
What stereotypes in media have affected you, and how have they affected you? Is there like a specific example or piece of media that comes to mind with that question?
I feel like there have been a lot of pieces of media regarding anxiety, and it's always been portrayed in a negative light. However, one of the more recent things that I've seen, I used to watch a show on Netflix called Alexa and Katie, I think it was, and one of the characters, Katie, had panic attacks pretty frequently, and they were actually like pretty accurate in terms of like what a panic attack like feels like and looks like. And then she also went to therapy, so I feel like that was like a really good representation, and it kind of made me feel like less alone. I feel like in this day and age we're getting to see like more representations of anxiety that are more accurate and they make me feel like less alone, because oftentimes I'm like, oh, like I feel alone in this feeling, like there's nobody else in the world like feels like this. But it's nice to see like pieces of media that have also like had the same experiences too.
Yeah, for sure. Are there any pieces of media that you think are like really good representations of disability, and why do you feel that they're good representations?
I'm trying to think. I mean, I'm gonna comment on something that another interviewer or interviewee said too one time. I feel like Crip Camp, honestly, it's about disability, but it's like such a good documentary because it really shows people how disability like really is. It's made by a disabled person. It features like Judy Human. I'm forgetting all the other names of the people, but they're like so great. It features like disability activism and disability justice. I feel like it's just a great like piece of media to really show what disability culture is. And of course there are also like YouTubers and TikTokers and Instagram, people on Instagram that like have also been, really willing to show their experience with disability. There's one, at least I think she used to do TikToks, that I know she had Tourette's and I think epilepsy too. I totally forget her name, but she was amazing. She like would like document her life having Tourette's and epilepsy, and it was just really not like comforting, but it was just like nice to see authentic disability representation of like what a person with a disability like goes through in their daily life, instead of like having an actor just like fake it on screen, Yeah. All right, that's it, I think, right? Or
yeah, there's like the sort of final question, if you have anything that comes to mind.
Oh yeah.
Has there been like a piece of media that has had a transformative impact on you in relation to disability, or that included disability in that media?
Yeah, I gotta think about this for a little bit. I'm just gonna say Crip Camp again. I'll be honest. I first watched it last year. We had it signed for. I was in a first year interest group at Madison, and for those who are listening who aren't familiar with Madison's, like we call them FIGs. It's basically like it's like a group of like 3 to 4 classes that like you take it in like a special interest. So I did mine on disability, and we had to watch Crip Camp for 2 classes. And it was just really eye-opening. I had never seen a documentary like that like in my entire life, and I was like, I didn't know this even existed. And it kind of opened my eyes to like how people with disabilities are being treated, and like how hard it was to actually get the ADA into action. So it's definitely a very eye-opening experience. I think about that documentary at least like a couple times like a semester at least when I'm thinking about disability. It's really helpful in learning about it.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for doing the interview and sharing a little bit about your perspective on this topic.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Well, that wraps things up today. Thank you all so much for listening to Real Disability. We hope you learned a little bit more about disability in the media. See you next time!